that Standard now has stopped being a newspaper. You know, the headlines for the last 2 months or 3 months have always been about security and insulting people without resorting at one instance to ask for feedback from anybody, not even any person. Now they have these interesting headlines that pass judgment on the Inspector General of Police, the minister, the president. Of course, the president lives on their headline. And some of the reporters are so happy, they think they have achieved because they are being cheered in Western countries. They think it's very nice to come and report about your country negatively. This is the issue. That is the question we should be asking ourselves.
ETV Africa News at this hour.
Thank you very much. First, let me, on the communication, on the live broadcasting. There is nothing wrong with live broadcast per se, because we also, our media enjoys freedom. We have the freedom of media in this country. The biggest problem with live broadcasting, having watched a number of them, media stations yesterday, is the idea that media becomes the center of mobilization for some of these protesters. In fact, most of the media houses are working very hard during the onset of protest, telling people, oh yeah, wengine wamekuja, sasa tayari ndio hawa. They're interviewing people in the street and tell them, what do you tell those who are still at home? You see, they are participating, directly in mobilizing people to come. But what was even of greater concern to me is some of the media stations whose their job was directing the protesters. And they are saying, oh, now they are in Thika Road. As soon as they converge with the ones in Kiambu Road, the possibility is that they will pass through museum and State House will be very near. You see, that is really very irresponsible journalism. Of course, the gentleman from Standard knows that Standard now has stopped being a newspaper. The headlines for the last 2 months or 3 months have always been about security and insulting people without resorting at one instance to ask for feedback from anybody, not even any person. Now they have these interesting headlines that pass judgment on the Inspector General of Police, the minister, the president. Of course, the president lives on their headline. I understand the desire and the tough economic times for newspapers to sell. But that cannot happen at the expense of our country. And this is really of great concern to me, that the media houses were expected to have self-regulation. Apart from, at the end of the day, even the media houses are doing business in Kenya. If this country bans, just because you wanted to sell newspapers, you wanted to do media engagement, it's the loss to everybody. And more importantly, let me say this, that it is unfortunate that political actors are relying on media. It's not becoming independent enough to give both sides of the story. For example, you will hear that yesterday's report is reported as the protesters have arrived somewhere and they are looting. And you are still saying the protesters have looted shops. The protesters have done this, and you can see they are criminals. Meaning that the characterization of also the criminals, we are not taking the greatest responsibility as citizens. You've watched international media, except of course when they are reporting from Africa, and Nairobi especially, that they are very careful. When they are reporting about Israel, about America, about UK, they are very careful about their own countries. But when they come to our country, report it as it is. And some of the reporters are so happy, they think they have achieved because they are being cheered in Western countries. They think it's very nice to come and report about your country negatively. This is the issue. That is the question we should be asking ourselves. The question of closing or not closing depends on the circumstance. You have to weigh between national interest and also the individual interests of media houses. The national interest at any given time will be weighed. And if it's necessary to close a media house so that you can serve the nation, of course you do it. You know that media played a critical role in 2007-2008 post-election violence, and that some media houses were indicted for the role they played. We are not going to wait until they are indicted. We have to take precautionary measures to ensure that we protect the country. And that is important, that we do so. Unfortunately, I don't want to discuss about Justice Mwita, because when the chips are down, when the courts in Kikuyu were banned, a court order is not there to save the courts. When 207 and 208 violence happened, nobody looked for the Chief Justice that you swore in the president. It is the people who held offices like mine who are held responsible. So it's my duty first to take care of my country. It is easy. I can suffer a court order. I can pay for a court order or so forth, but I cannot pay for people's lives when they die. And I cannot return back the nation when it becomes a pariah state taken over by hooligans and gangs. So I would rather appear before a judge in a still working country and explain why I made a particular decision than to doubt myself and say, I cannot make this decision, and then tomorrow there is no country. There is even no judge to explain to. Because when this country burns, Justice Mwita and myself will all be the same. We'll probably be meeting in border between Kenya and other countries looking to be refugees. And I don't want that situation. I want first to protect the country, then the judge can pontificate with very beautiful statements when there is a peaceful nation. The other issue is the question of how many police officers were injured. No, first of all, for people who lost their loved ones, let me say this. It does not matter. It does not matter the circumstance that anyone loses a relative. Even if your relative was a robber, even if your relative was attacked, it's still painful. It's still very painful. And therefore, we condole with all families that lost their loved ones yesterday. It does not matter if the investigation will show that some of them were trying to get into police armory, they wanted to steal guns, they wanted to do what? It is not their families that wanted to do so. Therefore, their families and their loved ones still feel the pain that everybody feels when you lose your loved one. And therefore, we want to say we send our condolences to their families, and we want to say that we feel your pain. It's painful to lose a loved one, and we'll do everything, especially in cases where persons were innocent, to ensure that necessary investigations are done and justice is served in every situation. How many police officers were injured? There are 300 police officers who were injured, and about 100 civilians. So total of 400 people were injured. And it is true that from yesterday's protest, there is a particular pattern, and again, in particular constituencies, where police stations are being targeted. And I suspect the banning of police stations was supposed to help the coup plotters make a statement that there is no country and that there is no authority. So that is why you see they want the guns and they want police uniform. And they want to show that the uniform is degraded so that there is no authority in the country. That is the entire mission of what happened yesterday. And therefore, as I said, we will take firm action to ensure that the nation is in safe hands. And I think with all those many remarks, unless IG, you just want to say one word? Yeah, just say one word, yeah.
Thank you very much, Waziri. Maybe